Hi, my name is Shelby Luvisi. I'll be doing this informative speech for speech 1311-033. This is my outline and my verbal citations that I'm going to be using. What if I could tell you there was one man who's affected all of our lives, and the proof of this is probably in our pockets and glued to our hands every single day. I'm going to be telling you about the amazing life and death of Alan Turing. The three big ideas that I'll be discussing regarding Turing are his early life as a mathematician, then I'm going to go on to talk about his work on Enigma during World War II, and finally I will explain why it was relevant that he was gay. So let me begin by telling you about his early life and work as a mathematician. From a very young age, Turing showed great brilliance. At about 13, he summarized Stephen Hawking's work for his mom so that she could better understand it in layman's terms. His first major work was titled On Computable Numbers with an Application to the Einstein Problem. He published this work at 22. Basically, this paper was in response to a question that an earlier mathematician had posited early in the century, and it said, is there an algorithm that can effectively answer any question that is posited with? And simply put, Turing stated, no, there is not one algorithm that can exist that can answer every single problem that we posited with. In relation to this work, he invented what we call a Turing machine. Now, Robert E. Ryder, in his article on Alan Turing, describes this as he introduced an innovative and fruitful concept of a universal machine, known as a Turing machine, capable of executing a series of operations of sequences of binary numbers. Now, this is a very simple drawing of what we know as a Turing machine. And essentially what it is there is a machine, you give it a set of guidelines and a set of rules to follow, and then it has a tape, as you see down here, that has ones and zeros on it that it will read and either leave or erase and rewrite. Essentially what this machine can do is answer any problem you give it. So hypothetically, it can answer any question given enough rules and guidelines and enough tape to read. Now let's move on to his work on Enigma during World War II. Now, Enigma was the German code used for all major communications, and it was an encrypted code that was deemed essentially unbreakable during this time. What you see here is actually an Enigma machine. It seems very simple. It's set up like a basic typewriter. You would type a letter in down here, and the board would light up as a different letter. Now, one of the things that made this so amazing was that it would never give you the same code. So if you were to type in B down here and it gave you B, if you typed in B again, it wouldn't give you B again. It's constantly changing and evolving, which is why it made it so hard to crack. Now, this led Turing to create an adapted version of his Turing machine and what they call a bomb machine. Now, this is actually the bomb machine used by Turing. It's on display in the UK right now. And so what you see in each of these coils, there's a full alphabet. And so given a certain set, it would be set to look for a certain phrase, and then this machine would run every single set of numbers. Another thing that made Enigma so hard to crack was that because of the way it was designed, there was 15 million sets of combinations that could be given. So what that means basically is that it would take over 12 million years for one person to go through every single setting. And it's why it made it so hard to crack. Now, using this machine, Turing was actually able to shorten the war by 2 years and saved roughly 14 million lives. Now, as Andrew Hodges explains in his article, Alan Turing, A Short Biography, Alan Turing was almost uniquely in possession of three key ideas: his own 1936 concept of the universal machine, the potential speed and reliability of electronic technology, and the inefficiency in designing different machines for different logical processes. Combining these ideas provided the principle, the practical means, and the motivation for a modern computer, a simple machine capable of handling any program tasks. Essentially, he created a machine that could not only take input data, but could also process what that data means. And so this is one of the earliest versions of what we know as a computer. Finally, I'm going to explain why his sexuality is so important. So, Alan Turing was gay. He was very open about it. He did not try to necessarily hide it. During this time in England, this was seen as an offensible crime. It was seen as indecency, and he could have been put in prison. So after the war, he faced trial on March 31st, 1952 for his homosexuality. He was caught going out with a man at night. He was given two options. he could either face prison time or hormone treatment. And as explained by Andrew Robinson in The Enduring Enigma of Alan Turing, living at such a time of intolerance, he opted for so-called organotherapy, in effect chemical castration with estrogen, rather than a prison sentence. His conviction meant he had to abandon his work for the government. So essentially he accepted chemical castration in order to stay with his work rather than spend the rest of his life in prison for being gay. Because of this, he was denied further work with the government, and he was also had his clearance revoked. A year after this, he was found dead in his apartment of apparent cyanide poisoning. Now, there's debate on whether or not it was suicide, but several people think that it is suicide, given that it was cyanide injected into an apple that he then took a bite out of. One of the more interesting things about this is that in 2013, the Queen actually pardoned him because of his work on Enigma and because of all the great things that he did during World War II. And so this is just an article from that point, because like I said, this was all of his work was kept classified until about 30 years ago. And so the Queen decided to pardon him in 2013 because of that. So I have just told you about the amazing life and death of Alan Turing. I began by explaining his impressive beginning as a mathematician. I then went on to explain his amazing work during World War II on Enigma, and finally explained why his sexuality was so important and the impact it had. Now, as I said before, this man is amazing, and the proof of that is in all of our